Welcome back, everybody, to the Chris Salcedo Show. Leaked notes obtained by Axios from the White House Situation Room show that the Biden administration was not prepared to evacuate U.S. citizens and vetted Afghan allies before Afghanistan fell to the Taliban on August 15th. Joining me now is Executive Vice President of the Trump Organization, son of our 45th President, Donald J. Trump. Donald Trump Jr. is with us. Great to have you back, man. Great to see you as always. You know, American citizens and Afghan allies remain stranded in Afghanistan to this day, thanks to the Biden administration's incompetence. We also know that Team Biden just stuffed those evacuation aircraft with any Afghan person they could find, rather than having an organized plan to get our Afghan allies and U.S. citizens out. In fact, one of Biden's evacuees was just convicted of molesting a 3-year-old little girl at a Marine Corps refugee camp in Quantico, Virginia. Now, aside from administration and their utter lack of seriousness, isn't America's worst foreign policy disaster since Vietnam a perfect example of the Democrats' America last mindset?
I mean, obviously, Chris, I mean, you've seen the other disasters, whether it's, the prices you're paying at the pump, whether it's empty shells, whether it's Taiwan flying sorties, or the Chinese flying sorties over Taiwan, whether it's Russia amassing troops on the Ukrainian border and America ready to start a ground war in Europe. It's all a disaster. But I don't think anyone is shocked that the Biden administration, like with everything else, was grossly unprepared to get out of one of America's, if not America's, longest war. Their own generals could not have seen this coming, to use their words. The Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, said, I believe, almost verbatim, that he is shocked and dismayed that the Taliban did not have a more diverse and inclusive government put into place after taking over Afghanistan and our $86 billion worth of military equipment that we left for these people. I mean, listen, you don't want to laugh, but like, if this was a parody on Saturday Night Live, it would be amusing. And that's the level of incompetence being displayed by Joe Biden's administration. And it's not Joe Biden, because we all know Joe Biden's not there making decisions. This is Democrat policy. This is what Democrats want for America. They want open borders. They want to teach critical race theory in schools. They don't care if the Chinese stomp all over us and if everyone uses America as their lapdog. They're just fine with all of it, as long as they can get their social justice nonsense in there, right? If your grandmother was within 1,500 miles of Washington, D.C. on January 6th, the FBI is questioning her. But people that burned down courthouses in the Pacific Northwest, that's totally fine, because it's in the name of social justice, Chris. These people are imbeciles.
SNL could run this country better than the Biden administration, whoever is pulling his strings. You know, Biden is deploying, you mentioned this, he's deploying troops to Eastern Europe to bolster Ukraine's forces. Now, critics are quick to point out that Biden is sending 0 troops to protect America's border. The Democrats in and out of the press are pretending that nothing can be done to stop millions of illegal aliens streaming across the border as they did last year. But your father proved that a pro-American president can stop illegal immigration. What has your dad told you about Biden's betrayal on the border?
Well, listen, I think it's pretty apparent. I mean, he sees it. I mean, he shut down that kind of nonsense. And again, it's not just immigration or illegal immigration. It's the smuggling of drugs and fentanyl, a scourge to this country, killing tens of thousands of people a year. It's human trafficking and sex trafficking of women and minors across the border. It's people from all sorts of countries around the world, not exactly friends of America, coming in. You can see that by the ticket stubs. I mean, they're just flying airplanes into Mexico and then crossing the border there because they know they won't be vetted like everyone else that Joe Biden wants into this country. It's going to impact our children. It's going to flood an already disastrous educational system. It's going to flood an already overstressed healthcare system. It's going to flood our tax base with programs for all of these people who may or may not, in many cases, ever contribute back into the system that they're going to get benefit from. But what it will do, it will ensure that there are plenty of people in America dependent on big government. And that's all that the Democrats offer. This is simply about getting as many people who will have no choice but to vote for the people that are going to give them all the free stuff that the Democrats have been promising. That's why there was a run on the border to begin with, and Joe Biden has done nothing. But he's more than happy to send your kids to go die in a far-off land fighting a ground war against Russia in the Ukraine. But we're not going to do anything about the southern border where people are actually flooding into our states, the criminality that's ensuing from that, the attack on the police that's going on throughout our country. As you pointed out, unvetted people raping children as young as 3 and probably younger. We probably don't hear about it. But you know what? You can have COVID. They can have everything, and they're still going to get on a plane, and they're going to fly and disperse them throughout the country and give them whatever they need. It's a disgrace, and something needs to be done. I just hope that American people are waking up to it, Chris. We said it was going to happen. The media lied and told the American people there's no way it's going to happen. We're seeing it unfold before our eyes. Hopefully we finally wake up.
Well, I've got one more question before we could take a break and then bring you back. In a newly discovered email, top U.S. State Department official in Kiev, wrote to Washington superiors at the end of the Obama-Biden administration that Hunter Biden's business dealings in Ukraine undercut U.S. efforts to fight corruption in that former Soviet republic. Now, question to you is, do you think Democrats would let you or any of your brothers or sisters get away with something like this level of corruption that they're allowing Biden's kid to get away with?
No, of course not. And they shouldn't. Again, if it was us doing it, we'd be in jail. They made that very clear. I did 30 hours of testimony for far less, and I wasn't taking money from corrupt regimes. I wasn't getting paid for no-show jobs in a country I didn't visit, in languages I don't speak, and businesses I know nothing about. Not to mention the money from China, from Russian oligarchs with tied to Putin. I was told that was Russian collusion. But there's a double standard. If you're part of that establishment, if you're a Democrat, the media is going to protect you. All of these things that we knew to be true. I wrote the book Liberal Privilege about this over a year ago, 18 months ago, talking about just this. Everyone knew it to be true, but the media went out of their way to sell it as Russian disinformation because they were in Joe Biden's pocket. It's okay to be corrupt as long as you're one of those guys and are corrupt. Anyone else from the outside, anyone who's willing to stand up and threaten that establishment on both sides, candidly, that will not be allowed. And so there's a double standard, as we've seen play out very clear.
Darn tootin'. Donald Trump Jr., stick with us. I want to ask you next about what just happened to Rudy Giuliani on Fox's The Masked Singer. We'll get to that after the break, folks. Stay with us. Glad you made it back, everybody. Here with Executive Vice President of the Trump Organization, son of our 45th president, Donald Trump Jr. I wanted to get your reaction to this. Fox's The Masked Singer premiere already sparking controversy. Former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani was revealed to be one of those contestants. Two of the show's judges, Ken, I believe you pronounce his last name, Young, and Robin Thicke, stormed off the stage in protest. What do you think about this?
So much for the party of tolerance. It's sort of like what's going on with Joe Rogan. I mean, people are just not willing to even stand around anyone that doesn't comply with the narrative. It's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it's a reality show where you have people, I guess, singing. I'd never heard of it before I saw the controversy on Twitter this morning. So, it seems like much ado about nothing. But again, it shows that what these people preach ends up being total nonsense each and every time. We've seen that for the last 5 years. We've seen that on the attack on anything that's decent, on anything that's true. And as I've said so many times lately, Chris, the difference between a conspiracy theory and the truth is about 6 months today, but that's not going to stop them from going after the obvious. So it's just more and more stupidity. These are the same Hollywood people that are probably protesting, like Susan Sarandon and Jacqueline Guzman, the officers in New York City who were gathering together to, pay tribute to their fallen officers and having outrages about that. The same people who had no problem with what went on with BLM riots for 18 months. I think it's a disastrous thing for officers to get together. It's that same Hollywood ilk. I don't know where these people stand on it. I imagine they're in the Susan Sarandon, Jacqueline Guzman boat. And I just don't think that represents anything having to do with America these days. But again, it's a reality show. I haven't seen it. Really couldn't care less about these people's opinions.
Well, let's pivot to another reality show, Congress. Your dad had something to say about Linsey Graham, South Carolina Senator Linsey Graham here recently. Can't seem to keep it straight. Earlier this week, he praised one of Joe Biden's potential picks for an empty Supreme Court seat. But just recently, he wagged his finger at Democrats for how terribly they treated Amy Coney Barrett and Brett Kavanaugh. Watch.
If you wanted an FBI investigation, you could have come to us. What you want to do is destroy this guy's life, hold this seat open, and hope you win in 2020. You've said that, not me. You've got nothing to apologize for. When you see Sotomayor and Kagan, tell them that Linsey said hello, because I voted for them. I would never do to them what you've done to this guy. This is the most unethical sham since I've been in politics. And if you really wanted to know the truth, you sure as hell wouldn't have done what you've done to this guy.
So Linsey Graham was very upset at that point, but he comes out and he praises Biden's pick for the Supreme Court. And a lot of conservatives are going, hey, man, can you at least pretend to oppose the other side?
Yeah, he'll never do that. I think my father hit it right. Like, I like Linsey. I think he's a funny guy. He's a good personality. But in the Senate, he's a RINO. You'd see him on TV throughout the Russia hoax. And we must hold them accountable. We should be subpoenaing. I'm like, well, you're the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. You have that power. But, oh, well, we're not going to do that. There's that element. I thought he was great during the Kavanaugh trials. And like I said, I like him personally. But in terms of government, in terms of those things, he's going to roll over every time. And that's unfortunate because we'll be right on the issues, and so many Republicans and the weak establishment Republicans will roll over each and every time. I think we need to elect people that won't do that. Unfortunately, the Senate is filled with a lot of Republicans that way. Now, you always have the catch-22. Well, you have the catch-22, which is you still need to win the Senate. So I work hard to try to win that. I just want to make sure we bolster and help those who are actually going to fight for conservative values. Right. Not talk about it in sound bites and then roll over and die when there's actual pressure.
See, I'm not even advocating here that Linsey Graham be as big a degenerates as the Democrats were when they viciously attacked Amy Coney Barrett, a woman, a Catholic woman, when they viciously attacked Kavanaugh. I'm not asking the Republicans to debase themselves like acting like socialist Democrats. What I am asking is, can you at least pretend that you are in opposition to the Democrat Party? Is that too much for a guy like me to ask?
It's not too much to ask. Frankly, that should be the standard for our politics and for those we actually elect. But it's not once they get to Washington, D.C. That's the problem, Chris. You saw commentary about what he said about, some of the people taking selfies at January 6th. Now, again, we're not condoning violence or anything like that. But, the vast majority of the people in there, I believe, didn't even know they were in there. They're standing inside the velvet ropes taking selfies. If only these people, whether it's Linsey, whether it's Mitch, were 1/10 as aggressive on the looters, rioters, murderers from BLM and the other Antifa riots over 18 months as they are against your grandmother that may have been within 1,000 miles of Washington, D.C., maybe we'd actually see some progress. But since we don't have those people, or at least not many of them, we will continue to get steamrolled by the radical left. That's what they're doing each and every time. The only thing that's great about Joe Biden is that the level of incompetence, of sheer stupidity, of weakness, of just idiocy is that, like, the American people are saying, wait a minute, even with mainstream media as their marketing department, even with big tech censoring people like myself and others, with knocking them down, deplatforming, minimizing their reach. You've all seen it. Anyone who's watching the show, I'm sure, has experienced or been in some sort of, Instagram, Facebook jail before. Even still, it's so bad that trillion-dollar institutions cannot run cover for the imbecile in chief. And so we're still getting it through. And I think the American people are waking up. We just need them to wake up a little bit further and hold our own people to that same standard.